Rhetoric is the way of writing or speaking that is intended to entice or enthrall a desired audience. The study and understanding of rhetoric is critical to the study of all of history. The American Revolutionary War is no exception. In the case of the American colonists who were fighting and yearning for freedom from the English crown in the 18th century, language and rhetoric seemed to center around the term liberty. In Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers by Daniel Dreisbach, this focus on the importance of rhetoric as it is applied to the American Revolutionary War can be found in Chapter 9, Stand Fast for Liberty. Liberty is difficult to define because each individual or group can maintain different or opposing definitions of the word or idea. But Dreisbach had this to say: 18th century conceptions of liberty regarded tyranny and licentiousness as the twin antitheses to liberty. As far as the colonists were concerned, the term liberty drew them together and gave them a cause to fight for. Dreisbach also noted, liberty rhetoric was a form of shorthand or code of cherished beliefs with which to argue, persuade, or motivate. The colonists did in fact use the term liberty to persuade and motivate one another, but also used it to argue against loyalists and other factions of colonists who did not necessarily agree with the means by which they were trying to attain liberty or freedom. One of the most notable uses of liberty rhetoric in the American Revolution was by Patrick Henry at the 1775 Virginia Convention, at which he was quoted saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." This particular quote would go on to gain great popularity and then become sort of a war cry for colonists who were fighting for freedom from the English crown. While rhetoric played a large role in the revolution for the colonists, symbolism was also key to the success of their cause. American revolutionary symbolism was largely influenced by the Bible and biblical imagery. Some of these symbols included the Liberty Tree, Lady Liberty, and even Liberty Poles. The Liberty Tree was widely used on flags and pennants. It was depicted as a tree in a white backdrop reaching up towards the heavens, which can lead one to believe that the colonists saw themselves on a mission from God and therefore were surrounded and protected by his righteousness in their cause. The most iconic symbol of liberty during the American Revolution for the colonists was the Liberty Bell. The Liberty Bell was housed in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which by itself holds symbolism, because William Penn founded Pennsylvania, and within the Charter of Privileges, he maintained colonists' rights to liberty and conscience. The Liberty Bell was also rang on July 8, 1776. It opened the reading of the Declaration of Independence to the public of Philadelphia, proving the Liberty Bell to be the perfect example of symbolism of liberty, if ever there was one. As noted before, colonists were fond of biblical imagery, but they also used biblical passages to promote their cause. One of which that was frequently used was Galatian Chapter 5, verse 1, which states, "Stand fast therefore in liberty, wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage." Harry Stout, author of The New England Soul, Preaching and Religious Culture in New England, stated Galatians Chapter 5, verse 1 would go on to become an American motto. They used the Bible to promote their cause and to promote their agenda, whether good or bad, whether they're using it in a positive or negative way, it would go on eventually to make them successful. While colonists used rhetoric and symbols to promote their cause, it's worth noting that there were opposing factions within the colonial revolutionist sphere. And according to Dreisbach, those factions identified themselves by whether they used New Testament passages or Old Testament passages to promote their message and spread it to other colonists that they were hoping to bring into the circle. It's ironic that the colonists used their Christian beliefs and ideologies as sort of a shield or as a way of promoting propaganda because their actions towards loyalists and other non-violent Christian colonists were not always the actions of faithful Christians. Michael Rysbicki said, "One need only recall how the loyalists were treated by the colonists. As we know, the Patriots' rhetoric of equal rights was widely used to justify jailing, fining, lynching, forced oath-taking, and other repressions not only of the loyalists, but of other faith-based pacifists such as the Moravians and the Quakers." Well, in summation, the American colonists expertly used rhetoric and symbolism to help them gain a foothold during the American Revolution, as we saw with their success at the end of the war. But it is worth noting that while this imagery and this rhetoric did help them gain success, they used it for their agenda. They used it in a way which promoted what they needed to, and maybe not the way that those biblical passages or imagery was meant to be shown or to be depicted originally.